Welcome to The Dependence, a podcast of conversations about how our dependence on forces outside of ourselves can help or hinder our growth in our lives. My name is Jamie Adams, and I hope you enjoy your time here. Thanks for checking back into The Dependence. It is Saturday, Memorial Day weekend, and I'm really excited because I'm going to Italy this afternoon with my middle nephew, Grant. And we're going to do Rome and Florence for a week. Should be a lot of fun. This morning I was reading a little bit. Typically what I try to do on Saturdays is get up and have coffee and just spend some time reading and journaling. And I was actually reading back through one of my older journals. And I came across the first time I ever wrote about the dependence. So in the spirit of just trying to be more and more open throughout this journey of this podcast, thought I'd read a little bit about what I was thinking the first time that the dependence came to my mind. And then also wanted to just kind of tap into a theme from the podcast that I did with Ryan Harrison, which was the episode before this. And I'll circle back to that in a moment. And bring some context, or at least how I was thinking about how that part of that conversation led me down a rabbit hole to go do some thinking and reading that I think is relevant here. So I wrote this particular journal entry on Saturday, July 20th, 2019. It's almost 5 years ago, which is crazy. I'm just going to read the journal entry as it reads. So it says, there's something amazing about reading, thinking, and drinking coffee in mornings. This morning I'm feeling the urge to create, but I need to work myself into a space where I can actually do that. The dependence is a theme that I've thought about recently. One of the things I personally struggle with in my career is the feeling of other people's dependence on me. Sometimes it feels heavy. I've talked with Rory about this. By the way, just a side note, I referenced Rory in my last podcast with Ryan. He's been a coach to me, a professional and kind of a life coach for several years. So anyway, I said, I've talked to Rory about this, and he tells me to get used to it. Get used to the feeling of other people's dependence on me. This is a burden of my spiritual gift. Still, it's tough and it's annoying sometimes. It can be hard to tell if certain people love or like me or just cling on to me so I can help them. On the other hand, there are so many people I've been dependent on to help me accomplish my goals or get through tough times. While I love those who have helped me, I've also been selfish in seeking their assistance at times. I could also start a podcast on digital marketing and sales. Well, I did that, but that's with Scorpion, and I'm thankful for that. So that was the kind of the tug of war, the push pull of dependence. You know, sometimes I feel weighed down of feeling that people are dependent on me, and then also have to look in the mirror, and there have been so many times that I've been dependent on other people for the same reasons that I get weighed down, that I think that they're dependent on me. So anyway, that was the first time I wrote about it, at least in my journal. And I'll probably circle back. There's got to be other moments that I'll come across where I'll talk more about that. But shifting gears, just kind of recap on something that I talked with Ryan a little bit about on the last episode, and that was there was a segment, and I should have been a good podcast host and gone back and actually told you the exact segment. But there was a segment about just I think Ryan was implying, like, you know, as you grow up, you know, your decision making process tends to improve, and when you're faced with decisions, you typically learn from maybe past poor decisions and you start making better decisions. And I made a comment that I think that that's true for the most part, although in my own life, I can certainly say that I make a lot of boneheaded decisions. But I mentioned Rory again in the context of that part of the conversation. And in my coaching with Rory, one of the things that he talked a lot about was that in between a stimulus and a reaction, there's space, and that space is an opportunity for you to make a choice, and that choice comes with a set of consequences, right? So the choice is the cause, and the consequences are the effect of that choice. And it's funny, I was reading this morning an article that I had also journaled about back in January of 2019. And the article is called The 2 Mental Shifts Highly Successful People Make. It's written by a guy named Benjamin Hardy. I will make notes in the show notes. But essentially the premise of the article, there are two, well, as the title suggests, there are 2 primary shifts that successful people make. The first is kind of pretty easy and fairly self-explanatory, but it's the power of choice and responsibility. So essentially the mindset or the shift here is that I am responsible for my own success. I'm responsible for the choices that I need to make in order to be successful. And again, when I use the word successful here, I don't mean success in terms of business or money or any of those things, although it could mean that. It's just successful in whatever it is you want to be successful at. It could be being a great parent, could be being a great partner, a great teacher. But essentially, in order to do those things, you have to take on responsibility to say that I can control a lot of what it takes to get there, and then I have to make the right choices that I need to make in order to facilitate what I want to be successful in. And, there's a series of contexts that it talks about, starting with the recognition of being responsible, the realization that every choice you make has a cost and a consequence. Sometimes those costs and consequences are positive. Again, they aid in your ability to get to where you want to go. Sometimes they deter you from getting where you wanted to go. One of those choices that you can make is a choice toward success. And again, going back to the conversation I was having with Ryan, sometimes I think that, at least in my own life, I know that something will happen. I'll have an opportunity to make a choice that can either help me or hurt me. A lot of times I choose the choices that can help me, but a lot of times, or sometimes I choose the ones that don't. But ultimately, success is always one of those choices, right? Making a choice that leads me further to the path of who I want to be or what I'm trying to reach. And the idea is that once you get in the habit of making choices that lead you towards this idea of success, then you start building momentum. And momentum is really, really critical in order to get where you want to go. It's basically creating habits. Every choice towards success is helping you build a habit, which is helping you build positive momentum to where you're wanting to go. But then the article goes on to say that that's kind of where most people stop, is they're willing to make that first big shift and take responsibility, make better choices, build momentum. But the foundation of this second big shift is, quote in the article, is transcending your own independence, where your thinking stretches far beyond yourself. And this actually ties back to my original journal entry about the dependence and the idea that at some point in your journey, after you've decided that you want to accomplish certain things, or you want to be great at certain things, or you want to be successful, whatever the word is that you used to describe, this idea of achievement, that at some point in that journey, you've got to make a choice. You've got to realize, I guess, that your success is not going to be just based on your own independence. And hopefully your goals and the things that you want to get to are so big that it requires you to lock arms with other people, lean into those relationships, and allow them to help you in the areas that you just aren't capable of helping yourself. And what I wrote is or what the article referenced, and I made note of this in my journal, is kind of step one in this leaning into this idea of dependence, is thinking win-win, right? So what's going to help you that will also help other people? Seeking first to understand, then to be understood. I struggle with this mightily, in an effort to communicate my point of view, the reasons for my point of view, the reasons that I want to make certain decisions, or that I think something to be true versus something else that I believe to be not true. I oftentimes try to just rush into proving my point or making points that support my point of view, instead of seeking first to maybe understand the other person's point of view. And then number three, synergize and collaborate. So again, thinking win-win, seeking first to understand, then to be understood, and then synergizing and collaborating. And when you're able to do that from a posture and perspective of owning the responsibility and owning the choices that it takes for you to do your part to be successful, when you're able to pair that mindset with leaning on or depending on other people from a posture of thinking win-win, seeking first to be understood, seeking first to understand, then to be understood, and then synergizing and collaborating to get to that next big goal or accomplishment, that's really unlocking. And I found that to be true in my life when I do it. And there are certain times that I certainly don't do it. But I think this is a good framework to think through. And it really, just again, through the conversation I had with Ryan, where we were talking about experience leading to making better decisions, but still honing in on that space between stimulus and decision where we have a choice. Again, those choices help us build the momentum, hopefully in the right way. They help us build positive momentum or negative momentum in our own kind of journey of taking responsibility. And then they unlock our ability to lean into and depend on, in a positive way, other people, other forces, other experiences that will help us to get where we want to go. So hopefully that resonated with you a little bit. It certainly made sense in my own mind as I was thinking back through and reading back through some of my old journal entries this morning, and I came across this article. Again, I'll throw the article in the show notes, but the article is "The 2 Mental Shifts Highly Successful People Make." And now I'm going to go spend some time in Italy with my nephew. We're going to do the Colosseum. We're going to do the Pantheon, the Spanish Steps, the Vatican. We're going to go to Florence and do the Duomo, and I don't know, some other stuff. I'm actually not a big planner, but I actually planned a lot of itinerary for this trip, so I'm kind of excited about that. And we're going to eat our way through Italy as well. So thanks again for joining the Dependence Podcast, and more really fun and cool interviews coming your way soon. Take care.